Okay, I'm gonna go over the first study guide. So this is the study guide from the week 1 distance learning folder. It's 10.1.1. I know I put an answer key up, but I think it's easier if I walk you through it too, because there is gonna be a test at the end of next week, or actually at the end of this week. So this chart here is comparing asexual and sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction, it's telling us is offspring are produced by 2 parents. With asexual reproduction, offspring are produced by 1 parent. In asexual reproduction, it's cell division that involves mitosis, and in sexual reproduction, it involves meiosis. In asexual reproduction, offspring are genetically identical, whereas in sexual reproduction, they are not identical, because you're getting 50% of your genes from each of the parents, where in asexual reproduction, it's all coming from 1 parent. The fastest way to produce offspring is asexual reproduction, and you should know that this is the slowest way, sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, there's an advantage when environments are stable, when things aren't changing in the environment. When things aren't changing in the environment, it's more advantageous for asexual reproduction because the organisms don't have to adapt to anything. Whereas in sexual reproduction, it's more of an advantage when the environment changes because they're able to adapt to the environment. And now we're going to go on to the second. I'll leave this for a second here. You can check your work. And we'll go on to the second part of the worksheet. So now question 2 is talking about different types of asexual reproduction. So they tell us about fission. It's 1 cell uses mitosis to divide into 2 cells, and this happens with bacteria. That's what you should know. Asexual spore formation. Organisms produce spores that form genetically identical offspring. And this happens for what you should know in like fungi, so mushrooms. Remember, everything in this chart, because it's asexual reproduction, they're genetically identical. That's the key thing you need to remember here. Vegetative reproduction, pieces break off an organism's body and grow into whole new organisms. So new plants, because you're going to see this vegetative, it has to do with plants, grow from plant parts, and you could know the potato, the carrot. Those are examples for that one. I'll leave that up for a second so you can check your work for that. And let's move on to the next question. So question 3 is talking about sexual reproduction. So now what you should remember for everything in sexual reproduction, all of these are genetically not identical. It talks about conjugation. 2 cells of the same species come together and exchange DNA. Unicellular organisms do this, like the paramecium. Sexual spore formation. Tips of different types of hyphae fuse into spores that divide during the use of using meiosis. So you can just know here that spores divide using meiosis. And this is multicellular fungi. So this would be like mushrooms can do this also. Gamete production, this is eggs and sperm. And meiosis produces those. Sometimes you'll see this called sex cells. That's another word for gamete. And this happens in multicellular organisms. So you can check your work there. And let's go to the next one. So the next part, again, is talking about more types of asexual reproduction. And so if we remember, we said asexual reproduction has to do with genetically identical offspring. That's important. Budding. New individuals develop from cells on a parent that divide during using mitosis. Sponges. You should also know Hydra. Fragmentation. New individuals develop from pieces that break off. Sometimes this is called regeneration. And sea stars do this. With the sea star, the starfish could actually break in half, and each half will produce a new organism. And parthenogenesis, new individuals develop from unfertilized eggs. And this happens in an organism called an aphid. They're like little insects that will go on certain plants. Sometimes you see them on like strawberry plants. New individuals or offspring develop from unfertilized eggs. So all this stuff is going to help you with the test you're going to take next week. And I'll leave that up for a second so you can check that. The next question should go kind of quick. So let's see. Okay, this one you just had to circle the correct choice. So if we look here, I'm going to see if I can highlight it. Okay, a gamete is a reproductive cell produced by cell division that involves, this is meiosis. The reason it's meiosis is gamete, is a sex cell. Gametes are sperm and egg. Eggs or sperm are produced by males, and eggs or sperm are produced by females. So males produce sperm, and females produce the egg. Gametes differ from an animal's body cells in that they contain all or half of the animal's chromosomes. So gametes contain half. The reason for this is that when the sperm and the egg come together to make a zygote after fertilization happens, in humans we'll use, for example, there's 23 chromosomes in the sperm and 23 in the egg, and when they come together it makes 46. And this is the normal body count of a healthy human. A sperm fuses with an egg to form a gamete or zygote. So if you remember, a gamete is a sex cell, and a zygote is a fertilized egg. So when the sperm fuses with the egg, it's going to create a zygote, which carries all of the chromosomes. And that's what I just went over here with that picture. So you take a second, check your work. And we'll go on to the next section. So this says complete the table summarizing 4 patterns of sexual reproduction in animals. So reproductive structures. This particular type has no reproductive organs. It tells us a method of reproduction is a parent releases sperm into the water. The sperm swim to other sponges. So our example here is the sponge. Fertilization happens inside a sponge where eggs are stored. A zygote develops into a larva that later becomes an adult. So it even is telling us in the reading that the sponge is the example. Now we have one with simple reproductive organs, and these are echinoderms and cnidarians, and you read about that. And here, the male reproductive organ is a testis. And the female is an ovary. And they release eggs into the water, and the sperm fertilize the egg in the water. So this is like, or it is, not like, but this is an example of external fertilization, which you read about. Reproductive system. Males have testes and organs that transfer sperm. Females have ovaries and organs where fertilization happens and where embryos develop. Offspring hatch from eggs. So this is going to be like arthropods and vertebrates. And the last one, reproductive system that uses a placenta. This is most similar to humans and other mammals, but let's write humans here because we're going to be able to relate to that the most. And here's where fertilized eggs develop internally. The embryo develops internally. And offspring are born live and nourished from the mother. And we're on this page now. We're almost finished with this review sheet. Explore the diagram of the stages in human development. Then complete the flowchart using the terms embryo development, fertilization, and zygote formation. So we're just filling in what's in this picture here. And I know some of you had trouble filling it in right on the Google Doc, but I asked you to just type the answers below it. So once the gametes form, that's sperm and egg forming. And if you remember, they form through the process of meiosis. Make sure you know that. Once they form, fertilization can happen. That means that the sperm and the egg can join, and from there, a zygote forms, an embryo develops, and then you have the fetus developing. So if we looked at this, this would be like meiosis makes the sperm cell and the egg cell. Fertilization is going to happen. A zygote forms. So if I put 2 chromosomes here and 2 chromosomes here and 2 here and 2 here, by this point it'll be 4. And then the zygote is going to undergo mitosis where the fetus develops. For this one, we need to circle the words that correctly complete the sentences about reproduction in plants. All plants produce spores. Oops, I'm not on the highlighter. All plants produce spores by asexual reproduction in one stage of their lives, and gametes for sexual reproduction during another stage of their lives. Eggs and sperm fuse during sexual reproduction in plants. In non-vascular plants, sperm swim through the water around a female to fertilize its eggs. And last, we have 2 more sections here. This one, and then a quick question. So complete the graphic organizer of sexual reproduction in 2 types of seed plants. So seed plants can produce seeds in cones and flowers. And now they're asking us to fill in the blanks here to label the flower. So this piece here is the female part of the flower. The reading you did calls it the carpel. It could also be called the style, and that's the female part. Now this piece here, they're pointing to it over here, but I drew, so it's a little hard to see. But this part is the male part of the flower, and it contains the anther and the filament. The anther makes pollen. And an easy way to remember that that's the male part is it ends in men, and males are men. This is the petal, which you all know, that's what attracts the insects with its color and scent. And then underneath, that leaf underneath that supports and protects the seeds and or the ovary in here is called the sepal. So check your picture for that.